Hey everyone, welcome to a Grandmaster's guide on Susan Storm, also known as Invisible Woman. In this guide we'll be breaking down exactly what she does ability-wise, how to maximize her kit, especially her auto attacks. We'll also be going over positioning, best maps to play her on, and some play-by-plays so you can kind of get a better feel for how to play her in combat. So without further ado, let's go ahead and get right into the video. I want to first start off by briefly going over her abilities. If you already know what they do, then no worries at all, just feel free to skip this section and move on to the next. To start this off, I feel like it's best to go over her auto attacks. Sue's auto attacks are like boomerangs. That is, when you auto, they reach a maximum distance and then return back to her. Each auto penetrates allies and enemies, doing about 40 healing to each ally it hits and about 20 damage to each enemy it hits. However, when the auto attack comes back, they do the same exact amount when passing through the heroes. So realistically, you can heal each ally for about 80 HP in auto and do 40 damage to each enemy hit. Knowing this, it's important to keep your cursor on your allies while you're healing them, since the return auto follows that, which will give you about 2x the healing. This will help you maximize your auto healing and damage. Sue also has an additional jump by double tapping her spacebar.
Oh, I jumped over it?
When she does this, she'll jump twice, getting more height, and it'll actually activate her passive, turning her invisible. While invisible, she gains passive healing, can move around and reload, but any other action she performs, such as say autoing or using an ability, will take her out of that invisibility. Sue's left shift, also known as Psionic Vortex, is an area denial tool that can be shot out, stopping on the first enemy hero or object hit.
I'm pulling all of them in!
This ability does take damage in a radius, slowly pulling enemies towards the center of the singularity. These enemies are also slowed, increasing in potency the closer they are towards the center. You can actually reactivate this ability while it's traveling to stop it in midair. And one cool tip with this ability is that if somebody is in midair, you can hit them with this ability and it'll actually pull them towards the ground. Sue's E, also known as Force Physics, does about 55 damage and either pushes or pulls all the enemies in its way, depending on your selection.
Pull them in. They got double pulled. Holy shit, their tanks just got shit on.
This ability is her main form of peel, and it's very good to either start a fight by pulling an enemy out of position or pushing enemies that need to get close to you, like Doctor Strange while he's ulting. Sue's right click, also known as Guardian Shield, projects a 300 HP shield in front of the ally of your choosing, and it will always spawn in front of the direction they're facing. It also creates an area of healing around it, healing any ally in its radius, and any enemy that passes through it is slowed by about 30% for 3 seconds. You can continuously spam this ability, but once it breaks, it goes on cooldown for 6 seconds. However, you can retract the shield at any time by pressing F, which will give it a cooldown that increases the less health it has. One neat thing to note is that it also blocks CC abilities, like Doctor Strange ult. Finally, we have her ultimate, also known as Invisible Boundary. This ability makes allies in it turn invisible to enemies outside of the area, as well as granting them 165 HP back per second and slowing enemies in it by about 55%. This slow will last for 1 second after they leave the field. Her ult also lasts for 8 seconds, costs about 4,000 energy, and has a radius of 10 meters. Now, I find it's best to use this when other support ultimates are down, but more on that later on in the video when we go over play-by-plays. Oh yeah, and I almost forgot, not that this needs much mentioning, but Sue also has a passive with her melee. After the third melee and her melee chain, she'll actually push enemies back that are directly in front of her. I don't really find this useful because I don't really know in which time to use it, but it's there if you ever need to use it. Okay, now that we have a better understanding of what Sue's kit does, let's go over how to position with her. Just like any healer, you'll be positioning in the backline, but unlike a lot of other healers, Sue struggles with range, specifically on her auto attacks. So because of this, you're going to need to play up sort of like in the middle ground. I like to look at positioning in 3 different ways. I see a backline, a middle line, and a front line. Front line is of course where your tanks stand, middle is where your DPS probably is, and back is going to be like a mixture of your DPS and your healers. Your healers can also play in the middle line as well, but for the most part, healers want to position back so they can kind of see everybody. It makes it easier to heal them. I like to play Sue sort of in this middle of the pack, still behind everybody, but up more than other healers would be. This will allow me to heal just about anyone I want since I don't have to worry about the range on their auto attacks. I also have a lot of self-peel with my E, and I can also play off my shield if I have an ally next to me, and I can easily escape with my double jump invis, which will allow me to sort of like reposition or simply just wait for my team if they all die. The other thing too is it allows me to have better ults. Sue can either play aggressive with their ults or defensively with their ults. So positioning more in line with everyone, I found has allowed me to use my kit to its maximum potential. Now, knowing all of this, what would be the best maps to play her on? Well, I really like her specifically on convoy and convergence style maps. These maps are going to be a little bit more narrow than say your domination maps, and Sue loves this. She loves this because as we talked about earlier, her autos penetrate heroes. So there really is no limit to how many people she can heal with a single auto. The only thing that caps her off is range. This means that in these narrow pushes, a lot of your allies are going to be funneled together, which will allow you to easily heal them and quickly gain your ultimate. You can kind of think of her autos as Luna's left shift autos, but it's just her base autos that heal even more than Luna's does, as long as you're also hitting those return autos. The reason why I also like her in Convergence is because I feel like her ult is really good in capturing domination style objectives. She can honestly play whatever game mode, but I just prefer her more in Convoy and Convergence because of this. And I would prefer someone like Luna or Cloak and Dagger more in domination. Before we get into the play-by-plays, I just quickly want to go over Sue's counters. As I've mentioned some other strategist guides, there's not really too much that counters healers in this game, especially because there's no anti-heal besides Doctor Strange, but there are a few. For example, Magneto and Iron Man are really good versus healers because they can one-shot them with their ults. This means that the healer ult is pretty much negated if the enemy hits their stuff. Wow. But in Sue's case in particular, Moon Knight is going to be really good against her, especially with his buff, because his ult's going to do more damage than Sue's ult can heal. And since it's a stationary ult, Moon Knight can easily get value by counter-ulting. The other thing that comes to mind, and this might not be a direct counter, but it's going to be Jeff. I know Jeff is considered somewhat of a troll pick at higher ranks, but if you counter Jeff ult when Sue ults, again, because it's a stationary ult, you can get Sue and a lot of her teammates that you know are going to be playing inside the ult. Yeah, I'm just because of Jeff ult. He just ults when I ult, man. I'm sure there are other heroes besides the ones that I mentioned that can also take advantage of Sue's ult, but these are going to be the ones that come to mind, and are the ones I really hate playing against when I play this character. But you can also apply this knowledge to any other character that might take advantage of her ult like that. Just remember, Sue's ult is stationary, and it does heal a lot, but it's not going to heal as much as, say, someone like Luna's ult, so there are going to be abilities that can outdamage its heal. Okay, so using all of this knowledge, I want to end off this guide by going over some plays. Some good and some bad, just so we can kind of see how all of this knowledge is being used in combat. This part of the video is pretty much going to wrap together everything that we talked about and go over even more things. So let's go ahead and get right into it. So firstly, I just kind of want to go over a few alt play-by-plays, and I just want to do this so you guys can kind of understand sort of like the idea behind what I'm doing with my alt, not just like when I'm casting my alt, how I'm casting my alt, but sort of like what I'm doing with it. So in this first clip, I double jump in. This is because you can use Sue's ult aggressively. Remember, Sue's ult is 55% slow. So you want to use that 55% slow against them, right? Otherwise, you're not really getting any value out of it if you're just ulting your allies. It also forces them to fight at a massive disadvantage because not only are they slowed, but again, your allies are also getting healed, right? So it's just an area or like a space that they don't really want to be in, and you're kind of forcing them into that space. That's why I really like ulting aggressively with Sue. This is another clip of pretty much the same thing, the same idea. So here you see I'm going to walk up here and I'm going to ult aggressively, and they want to leave the space, right? So what I do is actually use her pull, and I pull them all back in. This is a really massive pull, and it really screws them over. So this is something you really want to be doing with Sue, right? Like, you don't want to be pushing people out of your ult. You actually want to be pulling people into your ult, because again, remember, you want to fight them inside of your ult because they're at a massive disadvantage. And so one way to do that is to force them in using her pull. Now, another way to use Sue ult is to counter ult or prevent other ults from killing you and your allies. And this is kind of where the support class sort of comes in handy. So with the support class, what you really want to do is you want to get good at predicting people's behaviors. You want to be good at predicting abilities. And once you get better at that, you'll really learn how to ult really well in support. And so this clip sort of demonstrates how I knew that, say, a Doctor Strange was kind of looking for an ult. So I kind of had my ult pre-ready for his ult.
I knew it. I knew that was coming, bro. I knew it. Get out of here.
And in fact, this sort of idea of predictability is kind of what I want to go on to next. And I want to use Sue's push as a really good example of this. So we're going to be going over some Doctor Strange clips here. And as you can see in like a lot of these clips, I'm sort of predicting when Doctor Strange wants to ult us.
I pushed him away.
Oh, that's a good push. Yeah, that's huge.
And what I'm doing is I'm pushing him away. And so I think this like really speaks to sort of predictability, because for some of these clips, I'm actually holding my push for his ult, because I'm thinking in my head, I'm like, okay, Doctor Strange hasn't ulted in a little bit, or he should get ult charged soon, right? Because I'm sort of like noticing how maybe he's playing throughout the game, right? I'm looking at him, I'm like, okay, he's being aggressive, he's doing a lot of damage. If that's the case, he should have ult charge coming up soon, or he hasn't ulted in a little bit. Everybody else has their ults coming up. So you start to kind of get this idea, this feeling of when this Doctor Strange is going to have ult. So in some of these cases, I'm going to save my push for him. In other cases, I'm just kind of looking at him to fly at us, and then I'm going to use my push against him. Now, pushes don't just have to be used for prevention, but they can also be used to make aggressive plays. For example, in this clip, I angle myself so I can push the Mantis off the map. I'm doing this on purpose because I know they have to turn this corner, and this is a really good push-off area in this convoy map. I think it's like Spider Islands 2024, whatever the map is called. You guys know this area. But I'm angling myself here on purpose because I know somebody has to turn the corner, and I can actually get a cheeky kill off the map. And in the same area, I also do the same exact thing to Magneto as well. So like Sue is really good on these kinds of maps as well, like these pushes, because not only is she good in convoy, as I explained earlier, but you also have these ledges that you can actually use to your advantage to push people off the map. You can also use your invisibility passive to make push plays that you otherwise wouldn't be able to make. So for example, in this clip, my goal was to play up on this ledge until somebody came over, because they were sort of spawn killing us. So I wanted to play on this ledge until somebody came over, and I was going to push them into my team.
Yo, if one comes up here, I'm gonna push him down to you guys, alright?
Alright.
Wait, one's up here. Hella, I pushed her.
Oh, big.
That was actually a huge pick.
And then finally with your E, you can use it to push or pull people into certain abilities. For example, Moon Knight ult, right? You can push people into Moon Knight ult.
Nice. Oh, huge. I pushed him into it too.
Huge push. Oh my god, I saw that.
Or say pull people into Namor ult.
I pulled her back into your ult.
Oh, really?
Yeah, deadass.
So the whole point of these clips is really just to get an idea of how Sue can use her push and her pull to essentially affect the tide of the battle, right? You can pull people into ults, you can push them into ults, you can pull them into your ult, right? You can do so many different things with it. You can push away Doctor Strange. So the goal of some of those play-by-plays was to really just to get you to think about how your push and your pull can influence a fight, right? How it can influence certain scenarios, and to really get you thinking about more ways that you can use it to help get your team out of a bind or help give your team that advantage. Now, just like learning from good plays, I also feel like it's necessary to learn from some bad plays. So here we're going to have a couple of interesting ults. So this first clip is actually a pretty decent play. So what we're going to do is we're going to ult aggressively like we said earlier. We're going to pull them in, right? But I ulted a little far. However, this ult was completely fine because Strange was able to follow up with his own ult. They tried to leave, they were sort of debuffed, and all is well, right? So that's a good aggressive ult, but it was a bit far from my allies in the back. And so here's a good example of me preventing a Psylocke ult, but ulting too far away from my teammates. See, here I ult up, not realizing that literally half my team was in the back and they all died to the Psylocke ult. So this ult ended up being super, super bad because yes, I held my ult for the Psylocke ult for prevention, but I ulted forward because I wanted to be aggressive with it, but in reality, that should have been a backwards ult defending my allies. So the goal of the clip is to pretty much be aware of where your allies are and what you're doing, right? So like I said, the main initial goal of the ult was to prevent Psylocke ult, and that's what I kind of did, except I threw it out too far, right? I didn't do it onto my allies. So part one of that was fine, but part two wasn't executed correctly, and therefore half my team died, and the ult ended up being a bust, and they got a lot of value for it. And by the way, the reason why I'm spending so much time going over ults is because I feel like this is what really separates the better support players from sort of like just the average support players. One thing I've noticed is that as I got better ulting, I could climb higher ranks in this game. And I realized that support ulting really makes or breaks the game. Like, unfortunately, a lot of the game comes down to how well and effectively your support ults. And so that's why I'm just trying to go over these as much as possible, because I want you to sort of understand really when you should be using Sue ult and how to get better with Sue ult. Here's another clip that demonstrates me pretty much doing the same thing, except here I actually do it correctly. So this time I hear Doctor Strange ulting, and what I do is I throw the ult at my feet instead of pushing it forward, and I'm able to catch a lot of my allies in the ult, preventing them from dying by Doctor Strange. So it's a really, really good ult, and you see that this ult actually ends up saving this play, and we're able to kill everybody. Lastly, I just wanted to tell you when I like ulting with Sue. So Sue ult is a really, really good ult, right? It slows, it makes everybody invisible, it heals. We already went over all of that. But the thing about Sue ult is that it doesn't really last for that long. So just like Mantis ult, Sue ult lasts for about 8 seconds. And if you compare that to, say, someone like Luna's ult, that's going to be a 12-second ult. Or if you compare that to Cloak and Dagger's ult, each dash lasts for 5 seconds, she gets 4 dashes, and so her ult's going to last for about 20 seconds. And so the point I'm trying to make is that Sue ult does not outlast other healer ults, right? It might last as long as Mantis ult, but that's about it, or other Sue ults. And so you don't really want to use her ult as a counter to other healer ults. Rather, you want to use her ult when other healer ults are over or they're about to be over. Because even though Sue ult does all these great things, it doesn't really matter if other healer ults are out-sustaining hers, right? For example, if you ult and a Luna's ulting, it doesn't matter that your ult's slowing and making everybody invisible. Luna ult's just going to keep everybody alive inside of your ult, and it's going to last for an additional 4 seconds after your ult ends. And so your ult just gets no value from that. So I would try to use her ult when other support ults are over or when they're about to be over, and to use as, say, an engage tool or to prevent other ults from killing you in your backline. It really just depends on how you communicate with your other support, on who's going to counter ult and who's going to engage ult. But that's it. That's going to be the end of the video. I hope you took a lot away from this video. I hope you learned a lot of stuff. Sue really is one of the most fun supports right now. Her auto heals are amazing. Her ult's really good if you can use it correctly, and her base kit abilities are honestly just excellent for a support player. They have great peel, they have great setup, and they also allow her to get away from dive. But she does take a little bit of getting used to, and so I hope this video helped you guys, well, get more used to it. But in any case, I hope you enjoyed the video, and until the next one, see ya!